Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. In this episode, we are joined by Brent Bruning, who is a Master Hand Analyst and helps his clients to discover the power of their hands so that they can become unstuck and live their best life possible. Be prepared to learn the work of a hand analyst and how this differs from palm reading, what we can discover and learn from the power of our hands, process of working with a master hand analyst such as Brent, the ancient wisdom that backs up this phenomenon, and as a case study, Brent also reads my hands on the podcast. Before that though, this episode is brought to you by Riverside. Riverside is an online studio platform designed to record, edit, and share high quality podcasts that are built for growth from day one. Powered by AI, you can record in 4K video or from your phone and automatically remove filler words such as ums, ahs, you knows, and many other speech patterns. Built for human conversations, Riverside makes it super easy to start a podcast that sounds great. Ready to start your podcast? Check out the link in the show note description to learn more about Riverside and get a 15%, that's a 15% discount off a paid subscription. Now to today's episode with Brent. Brent, welcome to Raising Consciousness today. How are you doing?
I'm raising my consciousness. I am in a really great zone. I've been raising people's consciousness all day long through a process called a hero's journey, and I'm reading their hands. So it's so great when I'm able to get people in their sweet spot, and then I get in the sweet spot. So yes, to answer in a very long-winded way, yeah, I'm doing great. I'm in kind of a great peak state today.
Well, that tees us up nicely to learn more about you and your work. Who are you and what is the work that you do?
So I am a hand analyst. Actually, if you want to go deeper, I'm a master hand analyst, which is a distinction that nobody cares about. But what that means is that I graduated after about 10 years, almost like a PhD level of looking at people's neurological patterns as they show up in the hands in order to help people understand the blueprint of their life. So just try to think that your life is mirroring these neurological patterns. So I have read 26,000 hands, at least. I don't count at parties. And I do this for a living. People come to me because they want to understand their blueprint of their life, like twins separate from birth. And more importantly, because they've seen somebody alter that blueprint because they've been stuck in a pattern for a while. I help them break through it. But you got to name it to tame it. You got to see the pattern before you can do anything about it.
Why do you do what you do? What's the big reason why behind your work?
That's a great question. I don't think about that too much, other than it's kind of, I have had my own hands read. I know what my hands say. And the hands reveal a life purpose or a state of consciousness that is very unique to my path, that says that I am here to become a world success wisdom leader, helping people liberate themselves to reach their life purpose. So my life purpose is helping people find their life purpose. So that is literally an interpretation from my hand. So I know this is a big thing to try to get your head around, that your life purpose is actually inside, or the state of your consciousness, that where you get fulfillment is inside your fingerprints and hands. And when you can decode that, you kind of see what God put you on the planet for, or spirit, or whatever you want to call the universe. So that's why I do it, is because it fulfills me, and I get a high amount of energy, and it hits like a ka-chunk in my nervous system every time that I go into this process with people.
And why does your work matter? Like, why should people who have just press play or watch on this episode stick around to learn more about your work? And obviously, we're going to dive deeper into it. But yeah, like, what's kind of like the big benefit, or why your work matters ultimately?
Yeah, that's also an excellent question, because hand analysis is commonly bundled with palmistry. I'm not a palmist, so there's no future reading. I'm not doing any tarot cards. I'm working from a pattern recognition of playing God and organizing people by lives, and lives have patterns. So when you understand your own life pattern, and it is a neurological pattern as much as it is a life pattern, then you begin to awaken. In 2025, I guess it's going to be one of the most transcendent years of our existence in humanity. I'm convinced about it. It's not even a maybe. And I'm one of the agents to help people move to that state of higher consciousness, out of the shadow. So you can think of it as we're going from analog to spiritual, is what I think. I don't like to say digital. It's analog to spiritual. We're going into the quantum area where quantum modalities, like the work that I'm doing, that marry both the Newtonian and quantum world together. These modalities are becoming mainstream where they were all fringe. And I will be, this work is essential. It's not just even nice to have. It's essential for the world community to adopt as an understanding of what is our path in our evolution, because I see that path in your evolution. So another long-winded way to answer your question there, Luke, is that we have a shadow side or a fixed mindset that says we know how everything's going to go. There's another mindset that is a growth mindset, and you may experience it as free will. That is operating also at a percentage of our life. Some days, if you had no sleep and you're very edgy and you got a lot going on, you're just running autopilot. You're running a fixed mindset. You know exactly how the day is going to go, and it's going to be as meaningless as the last 80. But there's another part of you, of your mind, that goes into a growth, and that is what we see in the hands. And I'm awakening people. The more you get into a growth mindset, and you were 80% in that, you're accelerating your evolution and your happiness, your joy, your fulfillment. So the work of hand analysis is the cornerstone of all, and I mean it, all spiritual modalities. The cornerstone is the being, the self, and I can read it. And once you understand the map, you break through.
Hopefully this doesn't come across as a bit of a quote unquote stupid question, but I'm very curious as to why the hands and not another part of our body? Why not the feet? Why?
Yeah.
What is it about the hands that is so fascinating?
The main reason is because of the way that our soul, or if you're a skeptic, I don't think there's many skeptics on this podcast, but the soul comes into the body. If you see how it is expressed neurologically, it comes in at about 7 weeks. In other words, 5 weeks, you haven't even had a heartbeat. You're basically the mother and the placenta, and your hand is mirroring what your brain looks like. At 5 weeks, you only have a reptilian brain. You don't even have fingers. You're just a palm. You look like an amphibian. And then the limbic brain, the midbrain, responsible for the housing the pineal gland, it comes alive. Literally is built, constructed, and releases serotonin, dopamine, all the things that make you happy, DMT, aliveness, and it creates these pathways through the entire body. If I was to show you that those pathways are soul pathways, that the soul came in with an agenda and it came in to experience certain areas of life, it comes in, you would want to know where those highways are. If you expand per square millimeter the number of nerve endings that are in your hand responsible for consciousness, and you compare that with your elbow, your ears, your eyes, your lips would be the size of a basketball, but your hands would be as big as you. That's why I'm reading the hands. I could be a tongue reader, I could be a breast reader, right? But in this case, we're looking at the entire biology of reality. So this is not something that you need to believe. Just look up, what is the self, if neurologically? That's the sensory cortex. Okay, what is the sensory cortex? Well, if you look it up, there's a really goofy model of what the sensory cortex is in the whole body. And it shows exactly like I just showed, this really weird guy with hands that look as big as beach umbrellas. That is why I'm reading the hands. It is a complete map of your consciousness architecture, which means that if I look at everyone's hands and I'm walking down the street, I'm giving a seminar and I'm organizing a room of 110 people by the shape of their hands. I'm doing it by the shape of their sensory cortex. In other words, I'm organizing people by consciousness. And different people have different states of consciousness that they wander around with. And when you understand yours, you'll break through, because then you understand what you're not. And then I'll show you, you actually in that place you're not sometimes. I'll show you where it is. open it up a little bit more and you'll be awakened.
How did you discover this? And how did you get into this work? Because I think most people who are listening, watching, probably haven't come across the work that you do. I know that when we first got connected by a mutual friend, I was like really fascinated to like dive into it. I like thinking myself as a curious person and open to all possibilities. So I was like, oh wow, like something I haven't discovered and come across before. So really keen to have this conversation. So yeah, I'm curious on like you, for context, kind of a little bit of like your backstory into this work and kind of what you've learned about yourself through that process.
Yeah, I was of the common man. I had another life. I understood patterns really well. So I was leading teams in Zurich in software robotics. So I usually had a big budget and I would make big transformations for companies. So I was an engineer and I was a geek. I still am a geek. Every time I go on vacation, I do something completely bizarre because I'm tired of being a geek. And so I would get my hands read or do tarot cards or something. And in this one vacation, I just happened to pick up one of those books. So I had two books actually, and they were really funny coincidences. One was a book of twins separated from birth, and the other book was a book by Cairo, who was an old palmist from the 1880s, going around reading celebrities' hands, including the Prince and Mark Twain. And I thought, that's a really cool life. And it's his stories. It was basically a bunch old, dusty palmistry book talking about his stories and his theory. And at the same time, I'm reading twins separated from birth, and I'm going, there's got to be this got to be the same thing, that give you an example in the book. It's talking about the Jim twins. You may have heard of them. They were on Johnny Carson way before your time. But there's tons of these studies that talk about there's this life pattern that these Jim twins were separated from birth at 39, and then they find out they have a twin in the adoption papers, and they look it up and they go, they both have a woman named Linda. They divorced a woman named Betty, and they a son, James Allen. The wives that they have chosen look like sisters, including the ones before that. They named their dog Toy. They make toys in the backyard. They smoke cigarettes. They go to the same stock car rallies, and they have jobs in law enforcement and love this very specific type of carpentry. On and on and on, right? That's life pattern. And I thought, okay, there's got to be somebody who understands there's a system here in palmistry, but I can't stand intuition. I'm too geeky for that. So I want a system. And so, they say when the student is ready, the teacher will come. I just got really lucky. I came back from Bali and I just was Googling it up going, that would be the coolest skill in the world, wouldn't it? If I could look at somebody's hands and see their pattern. And then sure enough, this old guru from 7 years old, he's had a career as a hand analyst, being dismissed by society all the time, named Richard Unger. And he had read 70,000 hands. That's a lot of sessions. Imagine this session 70,000 times, right? So that's a lot of times listening to the people's pattern. And he had understood that when he had a group of people's hands and organized them by fingerprints, he saw all the people that had the same complaints in the sessions. So after 1,000 sessions, he organized it, he and his wife, they organized it and go, all the people who are complaining about money issues all have this fingerprint pattern on the right middle finger. All the one with sexual boundary issues have another one. All the ones that says their dream is to be an artist have a fingerprint pattern on the ring finger, right? And on and on and on. So I said, great, go read my hands. And then because I'm a skeptic, I had someone else read from one of his students. And then from that, I got hooked.
What's the process of reading someone's?
Oh, that's a great question. I like to do it evolutionarily, though the other hand analysts will do it in a different way. I do it evolutionarily. What that means is that if you look at your hand, you will see your entire history like you chop down a tree and you can look at the number of rings. You can see that certain architecture of your hand, like the fingerprints, were developed at 7 weeks when your soul came into your body, creating an imprint that never changes. Then you can go to when the neural plates of your reptilian and your mammalian brain and your cognitive brain develop, you get 3 lines on your hand. Call it the lifeline, the heart line for your emotions, the limbic brain, and the headline. So I read those 3 lines to help you understand that the bigger one of those lines are, the more you spend time in that area. Bigger your headline, the more you in your head. The bigger your heart line, the more that you love to be emotionally expressed in a certain way. And disruptions to that allow me to see you've gone through some difficulties. breakdowns. And then you see that when the child is born, it's born before they can bend their hands. They have had already these 3 lines. And then they develop different zones of lengths of their fingers. And they grow and they maybe contract because their hormones change. And they go through life and they're conditioned within a family and the school system to be a certain way. And they find their winning formula of how they should get by. And some people become geeky, some people become oversensitive, or some people become supermodels and all those things. And all the supermodels have the same hand. All the geeks have the same hands. They all have the same similar personality. Okay, you can go down the rabbit hole, but you start with that. What is the old basic energy of that personality? Is it a down-to-earth guy that real fat hands that look like you can drive over a tractor with it? That's earth. That guy only sees things bottom line, and they never come to me for a hand reading unless I was giving a big seminar. So you do the elemental energy. And when you put all that together, you can see there's a positive side, and then you can see that there's a negative side for each one. Just like you have a nervous system that has a too much, a too little, and just right. You have a fight, flight, freeze response, shutdown response, and you have a zone of genius where you're happy. That's all advertised through the hand, and what triggers you is there, what you can't deal with, where you're getting anxious, and then how you act is how your personality is, and that is in the shape of your hand. So when I organize 26,000 people's hands, which is what I like to do on a Friday night, and you organize them by the shape of their hands and their heart lines and their head lines, and you go down all the long-fingered, long hands and all the people with a big sweeping heart line that goes from the outside of your hand up, and those with short ones, and what is the difference? You start to see patterns all over the place. So that's my process. Is I show you that there is a gift, and depending, and this is a big if, depending if you are connected to your soul, then all of your talents can come out. But if you're not, and you're not because you're stressed, then you're in a fixed mindset, which means you're in the autonomous nervous system, which means that you're running on autopilot, which means that you're not having a fulfilling life, which means you're stuck in a relationship and a job that's dissatisfying and you're making no evolution in your life. So once I point that out to you, you'll wake up and then you say, okay, what am I going to do? I'm panicking. What am I going to do without this? I go, first, own it. And then I show you what would it look like if you did break through and you started growing. You would be in this higher evolution called the exalted self, where all your talents are expressed and you look happier and your face looks happier too.
What's possible for people when they go through this process?
So the process is, we have to define that a little bit, Luke, because the process can go from 2 hours with me to a year, depending on how long you want to be in process with me. So to make that clear, there's 3 steps to bring you to a higher state of evolution. Number 1, you get your hands read and I draw it up in a diagram and I show this is your path. Number 2 is if you agree that you have been in a fixed mindset or in your shadow for a percentage, maybe for some people it's 20, other people it's 90, and you'll see it on their face, whatever that is. And it'll show up as, the longer you're in it, it'll show up as disease, and then disease, seriously. So I've got people from the oncology department, I'm reading cancer, people with cancer, and then getting them out of it. But once you understand the shadow and how much you're in stress, and you know that stress ages you, and you know that it kills you, if you can reduce that by understanding what it is that your nervous system is so stressed out about, and you understand it all is done through images, then I take you through a process called the shift, where you face all of it, just like you got hit by a bus and you had your life pass before you. So that's the shift process. And once you can be with it in the comfort of your own home, looking at all the things that have stressed you out, but stop stressing out about it, you reprogram the nervous system to feel safe in areas that, images that seem largely unsafe, which means you walk out and areas that normally trigger you, like your wife or you're asking your kids to clean up for 20 times or whatever that is, you don't have that problem. And then the third, once you shift, you get a big vision. And I say, great, if your life purpose is to be a famous artist, and right now you're working in the back office of Swiss Airlines, show me the transition of how you're going to go into that life. And it is a new life. So I guide people to a new life. It's not just a change of a career. It's a reboot to the life. So you've been going a long time in one life, and now I transition you to another life. So that takes a lot of engineering to be able to move that, but I do it within 1 month to 3 months. And people love it so much that that's called a hero's journey, because it takes a lot of courage and goodwill to clean up your life like that and move into a new life. It takes a lot of courage. So to summarize, I get your hands read. I then shift you. That takes 3 sessions to shift you, to get you out of it so that you stop freaking out about your life. When I see that you're from 80% down your shadow down to 10, and your face looks like it, and you're ready for it, I said, are you ready to stay here for 3 months? Can you stay in this consciousness for 3 months? What will happen? So whether you're an Olympian who's dropped by Nike and doesn't know what he's going to do for the rest of his life, or you're somebody stuck in a marriage and they don't know how to get out of it, or there's somebody who can't make money as a coach and now they're killing it, it's all in your hands. So I'm helping you in these stages. Hand analysis to a shift to a hero's journey.
What's the origin behind the work that you do? Like, how long's it been around? So one thing for context, Brent, so on the podcast, I like to explore these kind of topics and different practices and stuff through like 2 lenses, right? So through what I call like ancient wisdom. So that's kind of why I'm asking the origin kind of story, like where it originated from, but also through modern science for people who are maybe more in that camp and like need data and, like need science, kind of believe anything, right? I'm sure we've kind of met those people on our journeys. So we'd love to kind of explore this through both lenses. Let's like the origins of this, like how long it's been kind of like practiced, etc. And then, if there is any like modern science that not necessarily validates your work, I think that's not the right term, but like for those that are maybe a little bit more skeptical, there might be 1 or 2 skeptics out there that come across this and like they need that quote unquote science in some way to believe anything, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. So if you're any good at what you do, you take it to an art form, which means you're connecting to the wisdom of whatever your craft is. So people ask me, are you using intuition? I can't not use intuition at a certain point when you've done 26,000 hands any more than a trumpet player who's been doing that for all the hours suddenly takes it to a spiritual level. So when you connect to that level, then you are in a way adopting the same spiritual energy as I'd say even the palmists do. But I am anchored in what I'm showing you in the pattern, because whatever I say, I can back it up because I've published a book with 200 celebrities. So I don't say anything that comes out of my mouth unless I can have an example. That said, the way that I do it, I'm leveraging an ancient art form. So palmistry is ancient. Aristotle was writing, if you believe that that's Aristotle's writings, which many historians do, is that he wrote the virtues and vices. And along the way, he was exploring why the hands show virtues and vices of energies. The Greeks nicknamed each of the hands by each of the fingers by a god. So you got the 4 fingers as the gods of Olympus, Jupiter, Saturn, Apollo, Mercury. And then down here is Mars and Hades, in the palm. In the moon, Earth, and the moon down in the palm, in the outside of the palm. So you got the entire universe there, is what they saw. And I totally agree. I agree the way the Greeks saw it. What happened is that this wisdom, in my view, and this is my take on it, this wisdom is an ancient wisdom. I agree with Aristotle on that. And it comes as it reaches a person when they need it. So it's got a tremendous amount of goodwill in this wisdom. And when it reaches the person, they will be struggling for years and years. And it's just a touch of God to say, hey, why don't you try this now? It's like your angels have come down saying, you've suffered enough on this problem. Let me tell you the answer now. Good. Now go back and suffer some more and have new problems, right? So palmists, coming to the roots, palmists all the way back, tons of books. In fact, the very first book ever published was a palmistry book in the United States, first book. So it was published all the time. Everybody's got a take. Monasteries have a take. Hindustani, the Hindustani culture has one that's 5,000 years old. So like I said, it's ancient. But what happened is in the 1880s, Scotland Yard started to understand that fingerprints can help identify people from all the other people. And Scotland Yard started to use it and got very serious about hands. And out of that, they said, okay, if we can identify people uniquely by their fingerprints, then other people like William Benham said, well, what else can we identify? And Cummings and all these other people came around at the end of the 18th century and started organizing people like you organize trees by phylum and gender. So they began this movement to try to organize large libraries of people's hands to see the same patterns. These books have been published and are the annals of hand analysis. William Benham's book is probably one of the most important ones. And there's some things I disagree with that book today, but the foundation of it is awesome. So I carried it around until this book was messy. The leaves of the book were falling out. Ultimately, the foundation comes from the host of, if you chat GPT, all of the studies around ADHD, schizophrenia, Down syndrome, they all show different dermatoglyphic patterns in the hands. And people are not ADHD as a thing. They're ADHD in a certain area, and that is seen in the hand. You're not ADHD all the time. You're ADHD when you're doing math, maybe. So these neurological patterns that you see, Richard was already seeing, Richard Unger, and that's when he had his aha moment. It just came to him, and then he started doing the same thing. I've done the same thing. And so I published a book to help people see, look, I'm not stereotyping. And I'm not trying to get you to judge yourself. Compassionately look at humanity has been created with different hands and different energies. Know yours and celebrate the people around you because there's some things they're never going to be able to change because it's in their hands to live that life.
Did you get the photos of my hands? And if so, did you take a look at them?
Yes, I downloaded them right before this. And yes, I do see your hands. I'd be very happy to share so you can see. Otherwise, I'll just have to describe for your listeners what the heck is going on with your hands.
Sure, yeah. You should have the. Do you have share features on your side? It should be on yeah. Yeah, because I was thinking to help people to understand this. Obviously, as I said, there did send over some pictures of my hands. Thinking we could walk through that for the listeners and watchers.
Sure. How sensitive are you? Can I share anything?
Sure.
Okay, I'll be polite. I'll be gentle, okay?
We'll get back talking to Brent in just one moment, but before we do so, I would just like to pause to mention Soma Breath. Soma Breath is a holistic school and community with no single guru, where you get to learn a range of pranayama breathing techniques and discover the power of breathwork for yourself. What I love about Soma is that it combines ancient wisdom with a range of modern science and is currently being studied by Cambridge University for their breathing techniques and methodologies. Soma Breath helps to promote overall wellness and longevity, reduce stress and anxiety, and achieve holistic health tailored to your specific needs. From the online courses to membership to retreats, live classes, and breathwork certification programs, Soma has everything that you need to learn the power of breathwork and improve your health with a like-minded global community right by your side. Get started on your Soma Breath journey today by checking out the link in the show note description and discover the power of breathwork for yourself. Now let's hop back to today's episode with Brent. Okay.
So entire screen. So if you look at your hands, let's do it in the way that I expressed. Do you see what I'm sharing here? I'm not sure if it's coming through.
Yes. Yeah.
All right, great. So this is a hand analysis document, and it comes in, what you're seeing is this kaleidoscope of symbols around you. It's just my little legend to help you understand there's different energies that the nervous system is broadcasting through your hands. Everything from family to your mentality, to your power, to your value, to your visibility connection. All that combines to help you understand you have a zone of genius. So what I do is I would show you your zone of genius and what I believe is what you're here to break through, and how to shift into your most extraordinary self. This funny grid that I drew at the top right is your fingerprint pattern that I drew in cartoon form, right? So if you look, people never look at their fingerprints, but if you look at fingerprints, they come in as waves and they say, hey, from one side, and then they return to the other side. Hey, I love the party. Thank you very much. And others have a circle, a bullseye. I love it. So get that whatever that area is, I'll show you in a deeper way. If you have a big ball at your end of your finger at 7 weeks, because your limbic brain has made an expansion of that area, and your water balloon of a hand that is at 7 weeks, your fingers have just been formed. But some, if they're called volar pads, it looks like a gecko's hands or fingerprints, right? Those are those balls at the end of the finger. You can see on this example, this guy has a huge ball on his ring finger and nothing there. But whatever the case is, that ball stays for 4 months and you get a fingerprint. And if it's a big ball, it's like a topographical map. You have a skin ridge that comes over that, and you have a circle there. Or maybe you don't have a circle. Maybe you just have a wave, or maybe you don't need it. Maybe it's just an upside down T, and then you have nothing. So you have an upside down T and a nothing. You're just going, what does that mean, Brent? What does that mean? Okay, first off, if you understand that there's a map in the hand, and that when you hold the hammer, you're holding it with your thumb. Your thumb is your ability to shape your circumstances. And you got waves there, which means that you're somebody who is just loving, all right? Just a loving guy. He doesn't want to be a world success and make the big impact, and family and building up, having his own family and marrying at 18 is not his thing. In the area of power, the directing side, the fingerprint did it a complete opposite direction. The index finger shows that our direction, you point for 400,000 years. We've been pointing not with our pinky, but with the index finger. And on that, your index finger, the wave, the dermatoglyphic pattern, when your soul came in, it said, I don't want anyone telling me what to do. And I want to go my own
with that.
way. And I need to be a revolutionary. And I hate it when people put expectations on me. It triggers me. And I feel trapped immediately when people start telling me how to do what I should do and how to conform and expectations. I hate them. In fact, as soon as you give me them, I don't care if it's ones I believe in, I immediately jump to the opposite direction. But you have it on only your right index finger, and you're going, the common question I get, what is the difference between your right hand and your left hand? I don't know if you remember your biology, the right hand goes to your left brain. And what is the left brain? It's your tangible reality. We call it with language, and the architecture of your reality on the outside world when you're using your eyes and mind, saying that rocks are hard, water's wet. In this area of the outer world, we have a path of somebody who already wants to be somewhat of a revolutionary. On the left index finger, there's that funny upside down T formation. On the left index finger, you have this thing that says, when it comes to personal power, I'm interested in it. I want to learn about it. So when you have one of those things, then you can see this person has got a life path of self-development, of learning about themselves. And most of the life coaches, even though this is a very rare fingerprint, Luke, it's only 1% of the people on the planet have an upside down T. But I've got 60 out of 100 people that I'm working with have an upside down T on their left index finger, because I seem to be the beacon for people that are searching for wisdom. And it's called a wisdom marker. So they're a whole life about learning what is passion, and to understand passion and personal power. It comes as an anxiety as well, because all of these fingerprints have a too much and a too little story. Just like you get angry when people tell you what to do on the right hand, here you get really, really anxious, not of being stuck and committed in one thing that you want to do. So you keep switching all the time. There's your ADHD right there. Switching all the time. What is it that you want to do? What do you want to learn? What's your passion? I'm going to be empowered. I want to do this. Moving on into the middle finger, that's the balance. Think of it as, people don't think of it as your backbone, but if you look at your hand, you got an index and a thumb on one side and a ring and a little finger on the other. That middle finger is the area that the palmist knew called Saturn energy. It's structure. And this had a wave on the outside saying, around responsibility and value and worth out in the world. I just want love. It's okay. It's not an issue. But I came already on this earth with a transgenerational trauma of self-worth and guilt and punishment. and a sense that I feel unaccepted just for being who I am. So I wrestle a lot with the feeling that something is going to harm me personally. And whatever the disease or anything that's out there, there's a strong fear response. And in the end, really, I just want peace. Don't ask me to be this big mentor or anything, but that would be your exalted self. And I see a great potential, just like Vishen Lakhiani, who led Mind Valley, who has tenon arches on both index fingers, ultimately graduated in time from being the journalist interviewing people to now being the guy who's on stage. You're graduating from being this guy who's lived a very punishing existence to grow and learn everything about a self-acceptance, to understand that there's safety in the body. And what does that mean to go on a tantric level, to go into a place of aliveness, peaceful aliveness in the body. So this is an area of immense amount of growth in the area of being safe in your body and not having to work on yourself or feel guilty. There's more here. It's a longer session. I'm giving you the 30,000 foot view. In the area of both ring fingers, you have, again, a wave-like pattern. Now, I have already said that there's no judgment about an arch. That's the arch that I said on your middle finger, or that upside down T on your index finger. There's no judgment. There's no value judgment. It's just the way your nervous system is. But you can get that there's a more loving expression in your thumbs and your ring finger than there is in this area that says I got to constantly anxiously worry and work on myself and decide what I'm going to do next. So that area, personal boundaries, gets mixed into a life that says I'm constantly under construction. But in the area of creativity and beauty, which is the ring finger, because you wear that ring on your ring finger, you got these wave-like patterns. Says I love it. A design. I'm really great at creativity. And on the area of your outer communication, the pinky, which is about connection, just think about a pinky promise, right? The trust. That pinky is on the right side is about outer trust, outer empathy for other people, being a voice for the world, or persuasion. And the little finger, you didn't get that wave. But if we focus on just the happy zones here, what do we got? We got a guy who has waves on his thumbs that says, I love support and being able to help people. And you got it on your right middle, and it's okay. I can make some money doing that. And I love creativity, and I have a voice for the world. Those are natural to me. And I feel that in my path in life, I want to be a revolutionary, understanding wisdom, while I got to deal with this problem, this punishing feeling sometimes that I'm not accepted. And the last piece in the left little finger, self-love, self-trust. So this is the area of spirituality. And if you make your pain your purpose, then you start to see that if you accept it, and you don't just look at it as a cross that you're damned, that you have a difficulty in the interpersonal relationships and the feeling of guilt in that, as well as boundaries being violated, and having to go into that story. If you open up the reverse of that, in other words, you make that pain that I'm talking about your purpose, and you're going to help people out in the world who also have suffered with meaningless and feeling isolated and feeling not accepted and feeling disempowered. And you that becomes a wisdom leader and using the gifts that God has given you to be this guy who's loving and who's creative and an inspirational, persuasive communicator. You have a blueprint that was at 7 weeks after your parents had a really good night. That was already there. That fingerprint pattern was already there. How are we doing so far? You getting this? Or is it too a little esoteric, funny stuff?
No. Wow, just like taking a bunch of notes. So what would your number one bit of kind of wisdom, like reading, obviously my hands, what would your like number one bit of wisdom or quote unquote advice be for me moving forward? Because I resonate with so much of that. So I'm kind of interested in like, okay, in a way, like what comes next? So like what would your number one bit of wisdom be for me going through that?
Well, let's take the second piece. The second piece is that's your soul, right? So when you meditate and you're out of your circumstances and you're just in energy, right? This is the energy that's showing up here, okay? So this is the most foundational energy of your architecture of your consciousness. Other people listening right now will have different architectures when they meditate. This is your architecture. And this is the area that is where your meaning system as well as your pain points are. And the soul did not come for you to meditate your life away. It came for experience, right? So it came and incarnated into a personality that has a lot of different gifts, and it wants you to use those gifts. Let me run around the block with you for a second. If you notice, you got the craziest little finger. It looks like somebody took a hammer to the top of it, like Fred Flintstone, and it's still going blom, 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 blom at the end of it.
I've always wondered about that, to be honest.
So that's the area of communication I just told you about in the area of Pinky Promise Trust, right? And you got a big ball there. So that's called that's a fire fingertip, fire. So you love fiery ideas. So this is the brainstorming guy. You're the think tank. And that is one of the most unusual ones I've seen in my career. So this tip of your little fingers in that zone, when it gets as big as yours, says, I need to persuade humanity. It's not enough to just work on a local level. So this is a thought leader. So that already developed. There's no way that you already were that way at around 4 years old. It's a very short one as well. And it's kind of funny. You're a really funny guy and you're incredibly gifted in your ideas, but it's a very short, the length of that finger is short. So when the little finger gets short, it's like, who am I to really be seen emotionally? I'm going into the shadow side right now. Let me go into the gifts. The ring finger shows a great eye for design. Your middle finger doesn't care at all about following a structure and a system, except when it comes to working on yourself. And you can be really hard on yourself working on yourself. But in general, you're a rule breaker and you want to go your own way. We've already established that with that index finger. You'll see all of the times where you've experienced anxiety and wrestling with a lot of personal challenges for the first 20 years of your life, because you got all these lines coming from the thumb where you hold the hammer, where you have to hold on it with strength. So for some reason, that's a theme in your life. Constant transformation. Your headline is super clear. You could draw it like a ruler. So now you got a clear-headed guy, and he's on his throat chakra. There's a funny thing going on. The throat chakra on the thumb, you have three main phalanges, the three parts to divide the thumb. And at the base of that, it's not existent. Normally, you have a line that goes there. So this is a guy who can channel very well, spiritual energy and just kind of do and be a guide for other people. It can be very, very difficult sometimes to talk about the elephant in the living room when you're channeling a lot. So you're missing a throat chakra there, and you can just Google what that means. And your vitality, which is wrapping that line that wraps all the way around your thumb, shows its really, really strong charisma and sexuality very nicely. This gets mirrored at the heart line at the top that rises from below your little finger, directly below, all the way up to your index finger. That's your heart line that shows your emotional expression. And yours was written so different than the way that your headline, which is coming from your index finger out into your little finger, that was drawn like a ruler. This one was drawn like you were riding a horse. So what that means is that this is your area of sexuality and relationships. And there's been a lot of emotional upheaval in that area, especially on the sexual area. Now, if I combine that with the type of hand that you have, which is an expert, observing, pioneering hand is what I call it. It's a fire, air, earth hand. Put that to imagine your soul came in and it says, I want to be Luke. And Luke is this. He's got creative. He's a rule breaker, wants to go his own way. He's really, really funny. He's got a great sense of perky ideas. And he's really passionate and intense. He's got a sexy side, and he's got relationship issues and boundary issues and he's going, well, how do I deal with that? That's my car that I'm going to ride for the rest of my life. So the soul wants you to first accept that your soul wanted this, and it wants you to express this out in the world. However, the personality, or you can say the ego, which is creating this life mirrored in this pattern, and I can go on and on and on about it, but the ego has got a life that looks like this, and you are satisfied in certain areas that other people are not, like the area of design, right? Whereas my wife doesn't spend any time there. So that means that if you put the purpose of what I said, be an influencer or a creative influencer making money and be a world success at that in love, while being somewhat of a revolutionary trying to search for wisdom as he's wrestling with self-acceptance and boundary issues in relationships and distrust, as he tries to move through that barbed wire of snake oil and all the things that are thrown at to try to fix that problem, and becomes a spiritual guru in the process by exploring all these different modalities. We now have an agenda seen by the fingerprints, expressed by the personality. So we have a happy story. And if you do that, and exactly in the way, I would say be the advanced version of that. First, get yourself in that story. Let's say you're not doing podcasts and you're not a revolutionary and you're just doing IT or accounting. That would be lame, right? So first we have to look, does your life match what I'm saying? And if it does, great. Can we make it? Let's go to the next stage. The next stage is you're a spiritual mentor and you're empowering people with wisdom and you're creating a revolution on the planet of Earth during your lifetime. Are you ready for that? Let's look at, that's called your exalted life. And that will cause your whole spirituality to go into the next level. And you will awaken other people in the process when you stay in that energy. But let's make the reverse. Let's have you replay stories of sexual boundary issues and isolation issues and feeling that you couldn't say no and you couldn't talk about the elephant in the living room. You just went along with it and how you acted about it and all that stuff. I don't see your face right now. I don't know what kind of how this is landing. But
story of my life so far, in some context, in some areas.
So if you can get, if your life is impregnated in that story and you're preoccupied, none of your talents come out. And the longer you're in that, you'll get sick, you'll have every weird disease, and you'll need every weird modality to get out of it. So when you understand that that is going into your exalted life lesson, which is a punishing place, your immune system is starting to contract with your nervous system, because the more you're stressed, the less your immune system functions. You will accelerate your death. You'll accelerate your aging. So the people that have used this process, I'll show you. I know your listeners can't see this, but look at this guy who's younger. This is only a few months later. So look at her. Do you see a woman?
It seems like the changes are quite quick. You know, just there, like 2 weeks for those that can, or for those that are listening on audio. I'd recommend. I think we're going to include the slides in the show notes, and also head on over to YouTube to kind of see the slides. But, you know, the lady you have on screen, you know, it's just like 2+ weeks, and
yeah, and look at her hand. Her hand's completely altered. So the trauma that she's carrying here, which is blue, and the dryness in the hand, you would just say, just put some lotion on it, get over it, right? But what you're not seeing is why there is red on only her fingertips and why the hand looks like it's about to die. And over here, you can see after I shifted her, the blood is now resurrected the hand. The engine is now going and the blood is now circulating in her entire conscious architecture. So there's some things that you don't want to be conscious about, like taxes, like your relationship, on and on and on. And when I say be conscious about it, and it's painful, it's driving blood in that area. So you people think, what am I doing? It's a spiritual massage. It's just the same way. You're driving the blood flow into areas as you go into topics that are taboo. And when we did that with her, she was married with a man who, or divorced a man she's still living with, and the kids just take their dinner to the room. And I'm looking at this and going, yeah, but your whole life is about love, and you're in a complete mismatch. Go and resurrect that. Go have crucial conversations and heart-to-heart conversations and forgiveness conversations with everybody and get them to come to a new place. And she does. And that resurrects her entire biology. And she looks about how many years younger would you say this woman to the right looks like compared to the left? No filters.
I would say at least 10 years younger.
Yeah. And that's the average.
Mm.
Why? Because stress ages, but people don't realize that I don't care how long you've been stuck in a pattern. It's actually good news when I hear somebody who can invest in this process, who has been stuck in a pattern. I'm going to make mincemeat out of it. So people are paying $275 for the hand analysis to understand their map. And I said, great, go use any modality and throw whatever you want at it. I have mine. And if you trust mine, people pay $1,200 to go through my modality, but do whatever you want, but know your blueprint. Just know it. Anybody can come up with $250 for their blueprint. Are you kidding me? It's such a small amount for your life pattern.
So,
yeah,
sorry, Brent,
go ahead.
go on.
Yeah, that's all I want to say is that
Yeah.
You don't have to be married to the way that I am transforming these people. But I just happen to see your hands like a functional MRI, if that makes sense.
Totally resonated with a lot of that. So one of my final questions to bring this one home is it seems like getting the blueprint, the hand reading is like the first step, and then using that as like a tool to kind of match up like with our current reality, and if it's like, like in alignment or not, and then if not, taking the steps to change it. I probably described that very, very wrong.
You did it perfectly. It's exactly it. A to B to C. You got the whole thing. Does your life look like your shadow life that I'm saying? Or does it look like your talented life where your talents are expressed? And if it is, have you gone to the next level of your evolution that some people never get to? I've got people that are 80% in their shadow and they're 70 years old, right? And they've been in that place and it looks like it for a long time. But I also have like you saw in that example, a 20-year-old, and she's been stuck in the house with no future, just smoking pot all the time. Openly, I can say that. And you can break out of those, but you have to understand, what do you design? What did God put you on this planet? What are you? I don't know if it's God or you, but what are you here for? And you're wasting your time if you're stuck in a pattern. Let me help you get at least the knowledge and the wisdom. If you're stuck in any way, if you think you're stuck in a pattern for more than 25%, it's silly. Can you believe that after listening to this, you don't come to me after everything that I told you? And let me at least tell you what it would be if you broke out of that, and how I would move you through. What exactly do you need to switch on in order to get the engine running?
Brent, thank you so much for walking me through that. Hopefully it gave a little bit of context to our audience and listeners and stuff today on the process of your work that we touched upon towards the beginning of the episode. What's one thing that we didn't speak about that we should have spoken about?
You are really good at this. In terms of the podcasts I've been on, thank you so much. Luke, you've had some really, really good questions to get it home to the people. We're coming into the Christmas season, and you are going to be stressed with your relatives, and you will be triggered. And there will be all the things you haven't done enough. The best thing that I can advise for you is to first understand what you're going through. I can see in your fingerprints. And if you're there, compassion is what is the way to the next level. So my secret sauce to get people to the next level of their life is they have to make the pattern that they're in of anger and sadness and anxiety and depression as part of them, and they must make that okay. It is signaling to you that you need to do something, and if you suppress it and you don't like the feeling any more than I like Brussels sprouts, and my mom made them every month, and I hated it, but if I refuse to do it, and I refuse those feelings, and I don't bring compassion, you're shutting down, and you are going one step further into the shadow side. So the way that I would break through is give yourself space. Now, different fingerprint patterns have a different way of breaking through. So it's not one size fit all. Some people need somatic, or rather bottom up ways of releasing their stress by sex, yoga, as well as being able to throw themselves into self-development courses that are so fun. Other people need a top-down approach where they need to neurohack themselves all the time with the next thing and read a book. But it's different. Other people need love, and that gets them out of it. Just having a hug. Then they run on a different neurochemical cocktail of oxytocin where other people have a different appetite. But there's not one size fits all in spirituality. When you're sitting in a class, people in your next conscious awareness awakening, you're sitting around where some people will not get that. And other people, it's going to be the best thing for them because neurologically, they're hitting that spot that only language can get. But other people only need body language. Other people need tantra. I hope that makes sense. So goodwill and compassion, and understand that not one spirituality path fits all.
Brent, thank you so much for your time today. Where should people go if they want to get in touch with you, learn more about your work, get their own blueprint, and obviously your book as well? Where do people go to get in touch with you, keep up to date?
I would invite them to go to thepowerinyourhands.com or just write me. I'm pretty easy. I take WhatsApp messages, so you can write me on WhatsApp and country code 4176-571-7735 and just say hello. And send me your hands. I have no problem. You just send me your hands. I'll tell you whether it's something interesting. And if you don't believe me, I'll take 15 minutes. I just say, look, this is pretty good for you, but you're struggling with this. Want to get on a session or not? So the power in your hands.
Well, Brent, thank you so much again for your time today. Would love to bring you back on the podcast in the future if you're open to that, to continue our conversation. I'm sure there's lots of different directions we could also explore as well around these topics. But in terms of today, I've definitely learned a lot about the work that you do and myself as well, or had it confirmed as well. So yeah, Frank, thank you so much, and really appreciate your time.
Excellent. It been an excellent interview, and I could see this would be amazing for you to continue that path. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you, Brent. I hope that you've enjoyed my conversation today with Brent as we've been learning about the work of a hand analyst and discovering the power that our hands hold. I found this episode very interesting, especially, obviously, maybe not a surprise, being a case study and Brent diving into my own hand reading, which was very, very interesting. And I think I'm going to need to go away and reflect on this one, guys. But Brent will be back on the show in a couple of months' time as we explore this a lot deeper. I'm sure there's lots of different ways that we can take this, but the work that Brent does is, I find it at least, very fascinating. But I would love to know what you are taking away from this episode and what positive changes that you're going to make in your life as a result. Do leave a comment below this episode, whether you're watching on YouTube, listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or wherever else you listen and get your podcasts from. I read every comment and review and appreciate you being here and listening to the show. I look forward to sharing the next episode of the show with you really, really soon. See you then.